Hello everyone. Today we are glad to have a next webinar with you about the vProtect technology. I'm glad that we have with me Marcin Kubacki. Will help me to doing the live demo during this webinar. In the next 45 minutes, we will concentrate how to redefine your Citrix backup using using our technology, so vProtect, and what we changed in the latest release according to the Citrix XenServer. So the agenda is rich. So I will go through this few slides, and then we'll come. So we divided our webinar into the two major parts. So first, I will do personally a few, let's say, entrance slides that I will explain how the vProtect works itself. Then we'll go to the next phase. So Marcin Kubacki with me will show you in details live demo how the latest version redefine the existing XenServer installation in data protection world. Okay, so let's move on. So as you know or you don't know, we've been set up 4 years ago. Even right now it's closer to the 5 years, and we have two major products. We only do concentrate about the data protection itself. So the first product that we're talking today is about it's all about the protecting the virtual machines running open platforms, open systems. For us, as historians, it's all about the different hypervisors, except the major one, such as VMware and the Hyper-V. We notice that lots of businesses today are moving into the Red Hat, Citrix, Xen, Oracle, VM, Proxmox itself. I understand if you are on this webinar, you are mostly interested about the Citrix XenServer itself. So we are glad you are here, and you want to hear what we got in our portfolio and what's the beneficial using our technology. So just a few statistics before we move on. So we know that the world is changing. More and more customers right now is going into the building a new projects, and to be honest, they're looking for the better TCO according the all of the cost related to the virtualization. I've seen yesterday one of the article that today 80% of the whole server platforms are right now virtualized, and we see that about 59% is differentiated between the companies has more than one hypervisor itself. So it's not that the Citrix or the Ref or the open platforms or something new, but we see that they have a more and more impact in last years that we've seen 5 or 6 years ago. So how the market is differentiated? Of course, everybody knows that the VMware and the Microsoft has the most, and they are the leaders in this technology. I'm not talking about the functionality itself, but I'm talking about the margin of the overall market. So the VMware and the Microsoft are right now the leaders, and they're the first. What about the XenServer that we are right now particularly interested in? We've seen that there's still a huge of the install base, and the customers right now is more and more looking for the advanced backup capabilities. So that's why right now we're here and we're talking about the vProtect itself. So the community of the XenServer is really strong, and we would like to also help and participate in these projects. So a few words about the architecture itself. So on the left, you see the types of the hypervisor that we're supporting today. So it's not only about the XenServer itself, but it's today we have more than 8 different kinds of implementations, hypervisor that we can address today. Of course, most of them actually based on the Xen projects and on the KVM project itself. So you see in the middle, you have a vProtect node. You will see later on that we have an architecture which is collected from nodes and from the server itself later on. And on the right, you see that you have a different kinds of the backup destination that we can address today. And one of our biggest advantage, of course, except the really good UI number of the functionality that we address on the left side, is the reach of the different targets that we can address today. So you actually have a choice. You can go and store your backups on the local file system. You can choose the VTL such as data domain, hybrid store, or any other, let's say, open source duplication, which will be the duplication appliances, which can, let's say, share the storage via the NFS or iSCSI. You can go directly to the cloud. So we have an OpenStack suite connectors. We have an AWS S3 connectors, and we call it enterprise backup providers. So the vProtect itself can work in the two modes. It can be fully independent backup system, but it can be treated as a proxy to the different backup providers, such as IBM Spectrum Protect, Dell EMC Networker, or Veritas Net Backup. So we have a really strong alliances with this technology partner. So actually, it's your choice which mode will be much more suits to you. But we are only backup vendor which giving this range of the different targets to store in a backup. Moving on, in the latest release, we also, because we have a more and more enterprise implementation worldwide, we've seen that we touch in environments which actually, let's say, are geolocalized, or we have many of the branches. This is one of the cases. The next cases is we could have a really huge stack of the Citrix XenServer itself that we cannot manage via the one typical node, which actually is a data mover to collecting the backups and storing into the backup destinations. So right now, the architecture giving us the possibility to not only scale up, but to scale out, putting additional nodes into on a field to give in a better scalability and, let's say, bigger possibility to gather more and more backups if the daily ingest number of the data is more, let's say, than 15 terabytes. We've seen that in our customers, we reach the limit to store 20 terabytes daily backups on one node. So our recommendation, if you have a more than 20 terabytes daily, you should go and scale out using the additional node. It can be a different virtual machine. It can be a different physical server. It depends. Of course, we'll give you the recommendation. Just an example of how the architecture can look like with the Spectrum Protect. We have many of the implementation with the IBM Spectrum Protect itself, so I always giving the example. So on the left, that again doesn't matter. You use a VM rev, but in this scenario, it's a Citrix XenServer itself. So we're using always the native API to communicate with the hypervisors. We're collecting the information about the machines, and we schedule it and doing a backup. So we'll see how the integration with the API looks like in a few minutes. What is more important, the vProtect will always take the VMs after we'll do the snapshot to the temporary staging space. And this is the, let's say, again will be your choice, our recommendation, where the staging area should be, or it will be the local disks, or it will be the VTLs, or it will be actually the same storage that will be desired to store most of our backups. What is more important, vProtect node, it will be responsible to gather the snapshots, to gather the doing the clones and taking the backups to this node, and the node will be communicating with the server, so it can be installed on one machine. So here you have an example that the node and the server it's inside one installation. So we have vProtect API, database, vProtect engine, everything is in one place. So you don't have to be at two physical or virtual machines. But in case of when I said, well, in the previous slide, if you will scale out, the vProtect server itself will have the catalog database with all of the metadata about the backups. We'll have also the RESTful API to communicate with the third-party application. Marcin will show the example how the REST API looks like. The last slide, before we'll move on and show the live demo. In case you will connect any of the file systems, so here you have an example with the data domain, but actually is a representation. What if we'll attach the external storage and connect it via the NFS? So basically, from the data workflow, data need to always go to the temporary stage, then to the backup target. We have also few implementation of the data domain itself. So we are really glad that we are participating in the DD Boost file system program. We certified in this program. So we're giving the assurance that before we will send the data to the data domain itself, this data will be deduplicated itself. So few examples. Right now, the first 10 minutes of the live demo will be explain the 3 steps, how we always carrying off the new implementation, how we gather the information about the hypervisors, about the VM itself, how we have ideas to groups and backups. So in the agenda, my idea was to show you the tag feature to control even thousands of the VMs without worry about reconfiguration every time when something will change on the hypervisor level. And you will see the examples how to automate most of the tasks via the RESTful API. So Marcin, I'm giving you the, let's say, the control to the live demo. I will be glad if you will take.
You need to actually unshare your screen so that I can share mine.
No worries. Just give me a second. You are free to go.
Okay, let me share my screen now. Okay, so few words about the infrastructure that we are having here, because this is a mixed environment. It has both Citrix, but as well it also consists of several other hypervisors. So the good thing about the vProtect is that if you have a mixed environments, you can have both of them, or more, actually all of them, in a single web interface. Now, vProtect has nodes, as probably you have already noticed, and those nodes are, in our case, also connected to the different set of hypervisors. So if I have 2 nodes in here, in our infrastructure, I'm able actually to assign those to the different nodes. So if you have several different, well, maybe geographically dispersed environments of your hypervisors, you can assign dedicated node to the specific hypervisor that you are adding. So for instance, if I add Citrix XenServer hypervisor, I'm able to specify which node is going to handle the workloads and operations particularly related to this hypervisor. Now, for Citrix, we have recently introduced the change block tracking feature. This means that we are able to actually support another way of backing up virtual machines, unlike it was before. So previously, we had a full VM image. It was XVA format, and incremental backups have been actually done via separate disks with VHD format, right? In this case, so the increments were cumulative since last full. However, with Citrix XenServer 7.3, we were able to use the new officially supported by Citrix API to leverage the change block tracking feature. And the general mechanism is per disk basis. So it means that separate disks are being exported both for full and incremental backups. This means that you are going to have separate raw data disks for each of your drives, plus metadata exported every time that you have a full backup. And whenever we are exporting increments, we also save the change blocks maps. That means that we are able later to merge those backups whenever you want to mount them. So with the Citrix 7.3 new API and vProtect 3.2, which was the version that actually was supporting the new change block tracking feature, we are also able to do a file level restore. So we are able to merge the appropriate blocks and later mount a backup on the node with changes that you are able to browse.
Marcin, so can I interrupt, because many times our customers is asking, what about if I'm not, I will, let's say, upgrade some of my pools cluster into the latest release, but some of the other XenServer servers will be in the, let's say, old mode, so it will be below the 7.3 version. What's your suggestion in this scenario?
Actually, we have several suggestions, because by mistake, I had recently, let's say, POC environment with Citrix 5. something. And that actually, there was some error with incremental backup. So I was wondering why. And then I noticed that this is very old version of Citrix. So even with such old version, you are able to use for full backups only the first mode. Then if you have newer or free edition of the Citrix, you are still able to use the first mode of the that we are supporting with XVA plus cumulative incrementals, and that still should work. Finally, if you really want to have the separate disks option to exclude certain drives, you need to actually move to the other mode, which is in here. But if you don't have a valid Citrix license, then you will not be able to use the incremental backups. Still, full backups with these exclusions should work. And obviously, if you have the valid 7.3 license for the Citrix, you are going also to be able to use the CBT, which is provided by Citrix.
Okay, so we can easily mix two modes, so we do not need to force our customers to go into the latest level. So we can use old mode with the XVA, and we can use new mode with the change block tracking itself, which give us an additional bunch of the new features that we are really would like to have it.
Especially that actually, if I go to the details of specific hypervisors, I'm able to choose this particular setting per hypervisor basis. If I have some VMs that, let's say, don't like change block tracking because they have some certain storage configuration, whatever, things that I don't like, for instance, the particular VM to be backed up, I'm also able to override default inherited from hypervisor way to the one that I want to choose. So there are two ways. Actually, you can either select it globally per hypervisor, or you can later override it per VM. That obviously means that you will have a certain different set of features, because, like I said, disk exclusion is supported for the new mode, so the one with separate disks only, and change block tracking obviously also is for the new one.
Mm-hmm. So to summarize, we had an incremental backup before we'll invest into the latest CBT functionality to working with Citrix team itself. But right now it's even better because the change block tracking is giving us a better and a smaller footprint, or actually we got the new blocks that I changed from the previous backups.
Mm-hmm.
So
now, one thing,
mm-hmm.
you have shown the slide where you have 3 steps to connect to infrastructure. What I'm doing right now, I have executed index task. Well, this is also being done automatically by vProtect, but you don't typically want to wait once you have changed something in your infrastructure and you want to invoke it, for instance, manually. So I have invoked that one. The task is complete. And now one of the things that I wanted to show you is that, not this one, it is supposed probably to be this one. Hold on. Maybe that would be nice to save that one. Okay, so what I have done right now, I have assigned a tag, backup group 1, for instance, on my Citrix environment, right? This means that whenever we are invoking or if it's done automatically, then it's also updated. I guess this is the one yes, the XenServer 7.2. I guess this is this one. Whenever the hypervisor gets indexed, you're also able to fetch the tags. And now the cool thing about the tagging and the naming convention, because you may also find that in larger scale deployments, is that you are able to automatically assign and deassign VMs based on a certain rules. For instance, my VM is currently has backup group 1 tag. And now, whenever it is obviously already in a group. However, whenever I want to manage those groups automatically, vProtect provides me a certain settings that I can use. First is obviously disabled. If you don't want to have that done automatically, you can always edit group, assign VMs to those groups based on some filters and just clicking around and adding VMs that you would like. However, if you will turn on the assign only mode, it means that now whenever VM gets detected with a certain tag, so it has no group assigned, it will be automatically assigned to the group that matches the rules. Rules can be multiple defined. You can have some include tag, some regex that I want to have my NTP or maybe important VMs, well, at least those that begin with important VM name, or maybe backup group 1 tag to be included in the group. But I really want to exclude those that begin with NTP, because I know that all of my customers, if they have some local NTP server, they don't want those VMs to be backed up. So you have several options here. You can create multiple input tags, include regex rules. And finally, that means that this group will have those assignment rules in place. Now, this means that the VMs will be added only, but if I also want to remove them from the group, I can change that here. And now the VMs will be managed automatically. So the VM gets assigned, suddenly you remove a tag on your hypervisor, the VM has no longer any matching criteria, so it gets removed, maybe reassigned to the other group that's where it should be.
Mm-hmm. So Marcin, so in this scenario, So if we will, let's say, push information to the virtualization guys, which managing their own Citrix XenServer pools or other hypervisor in this scenario, you can just go and says, assign the machine to the specific tags, and this tag will be automatically assigned this virtual machine to our groups, to the backup destination, and to the schedules. So we don't need to manually, every time when we'll have a new machines, we don't need to, we can auto discover, attach to tag, and do all of the magic.
Correct. Especially that if you have, well, vProtect has its own inventory for virtual machines. Keep in mind this flag, okay? Auto remove non-present VMs. This is another feature for the auto assignment of the VMs. If I go to the dashboard, I see protected, not protected, and without the schedule, right? But if the VM is no longer there, actually it becomes, it has something like this, right? This one no longer exists. Well, this one is not assigned to any group, but you can imagine that it were assigned to a specific group, okay? It is assigned, and suddenly I have not protected in here. So the setting here enables you to automatically remove such VMs because probably you don't want to protect it anymore. Well, the backups will fail anyway because the VM no longer exists. So you are able to automatically remove it so that it's not just bothering you with unnecessary, not protected state. So as you can see, you have quite flexible options how you can assign, remove VMs, and assigning and removal of VMs obviously corresponds to automatically assign to some sort of policy, okay? So actually the group itself, whenever you are going to the group, you have the option to select schedules, and those schedules get assigned automatically to the VMs, which means that then we are able to say if particular VM, like this one, is protected or not, okay, based on the schedules coming from the group. So the indicator, if it's protected or not protected, is technically related to the schedules and when the VM is supposed to be run. Okay, now let's back up something maybe. This is the Citrix VMs that I have here. Those are already in the separate disks and with change block tracking enabled, okay? Now, I have created a full backup, so this is the state that it has been stored in IBM Spectrum Protect, and then I initiated incremental backup. Because it takes few minutes, maybe let's just initiate another incremental, but let's make some changes in the VM. So I have my test file in here. Currently, it is in, let's say, with containing some date. Now let's run a script. The script just basically updates this file with the current time, and we just invoke sync. Well, the sync command is basically to make things faster because operating system would sync the data anyway at some point, but in order for us to have this backup actually have some changes, we need obviously to force it a little bit to make those things appear instantly. I'm creating an incremental backup, and I want to store it again in the IBM Spectrum Protect. So basically what now happens, the vProtect, as usual, creates an export task, and later it will create a store task to store the backups in this case, IBM Spectrum Protect. One thing that you have to notice here are certain tabs which are available only in this mode. So first is the Snapshot tab. This tab actually gives you the idea what snapshot is vProtect aware. He has created several snapshots, for instance, and one of them always is marked as current for incremental backup. So this is the snapshot which was last stored in the backup provider. It's safe, so we can use it later as a base for as a reference snapshot for the incremental with the change log tracking. With the old mechanism, the mechanism was different because it was actually using last full. So there was no need to have such snapshot tracking. However, you can imagine that you have some network outage and some of your backups, incremental backups, have failed. And later, finally, you have managed to create an increment. So there are some set of snapshots still present on your hypervisor, but your current incremental is, let's say, 3 rows below. Finally, it manages to create another snapshot, use change block tracking feature to track the changes between the last one and the current state, and export everything as a one shot so that you have a consistent difference being stored in your backup provider. Export task and store task has already succeeded. We can refresh this page. So now I see that the last backup is 1 megabyte something, so something has changed. And additional thing actually that is also typical for this mode is that I have drives being visible. So I have separate drives and I can exclude them on demand if I want some particular drive to be excluded from the backup. Now let's maybe mount this backup. It will be an easy way of testing if I'm able to check my file. I have already several mounted backups.
So I mean, in the meantime, just will add that we have 2 different ways how to restore the data. So we can come back and restore the particular snapshot directly to the hypervisor, to the Citrix XenServer. We can restore it as a VM, as an image to the vProtect node itself. So then the administrator can decide it how to import and move to the specific Citrix XenServer pool. And Marcin is showing right now the mounted backup features. It means that we mounting the full image and we can easily grab and restore the individual file without restoring the machine into the production.
Well, probably this one has failed because I have reached 100% of my storage in here.
It's like always in demo. Something must go wrong.
Wrong, obviously. I'm waiting. Maybe it should free up some space. Let's try, because I have another one here mounted, so those are also can be removed. Let's wait a moment. You can actually monitor the state of your, yeah, as you can see. The staging space is 100% in this particular case. Well, this one is not too big, so we have to be aware of. And one thing that actually in the meantime I can show is that vProtect basically is able to, 0. Actually, we don't need.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that you don't need to be polite on the demo system, so.
I will remove the previous, those are no longer needed. And now I have 17 gigs. Okay, so that's still better than nothing. So let me, in this case, I actually need to restore again, because I have probably removed one of those. And our current backup is for this VM. So let's mount this one. In the meantime, actually, for the changelog tracking, what we are doing, we are actually able to merge the backup on the fly. So whenever you are importing backups or mounting them to the hypervisor, we need first to fetch all of the backups from the backup provider. It can be, let's say, TSM. And once we have all of them, we are able to merge them and present to the user or push to the hypervisor of your choice. So for instance, you're able to restore to the hypervisor, let's say to the other XenServer, and provide the storage that you want to use. So that merging process is on our side. Unlike the previous mode, which was all done by Citrix API. That's one of the reasons why the previous mode did not support the file level restore. So that's one of those all those things that have been done previously by the Citrix API. Well, those are still available. So if you have newer hypervisors and you want to use the old API, that's still fine. You are able to go. So now the restore process has finished, so the data is already there. And one of the things that I want to show you is that here in the log file, you will see there is merge completed. So he noticed that there are 3 backups that he needs to merge. We need to merge 2 increments to the one base backup that has been already patched. And once the merge is complete, he will just mount the backup into appropriate directory. So the backup should actually appear here as one of the modules. The same approach obviously happens when we want to import the VM to the target hypervisor. So we will be able to push the data to the hypervisor, and it should be exactly in the incremental, well, the merge state. So now I'm going to this new mount point that I have just right now here, and here I have our date text file, which is obviously in the updated time after merge. So the correct blocks have been merged and the data has been successfully mounted in here. Okay, so that covers the most of the change block tracking things. Few words about the setup, okay, of the change block tracking. Actually, in our document here, I need to copy paste. Hold on. There is section which is related to change block tracking, okay? So in general, Citrix servers have disabled by default the change block tracking. So first, well, actually NBD servers service. So you need to enable it using one single command on your hypervisor. Then there is NBD client that we also provide with our package, but if you have some more custom kernel that you want to use, you may personally need to build that one. But in general, you are just able to execute enable NBD, and that should be perfectly fine, plus installing the additional package that we are providing. That should result with the appropriate NBD drives, and after restarting the node, this node should be able to use change block tracking with the XenServer. So those few steps that you need to do is actually the result that Citrix has actually done their incremental and change block tracking option via NBD service, which is now supported by the Red Hat in their main packages. So they provide the sources and they allow you to build, but those are not present in the main. So that's the way you enable change block tracking for Citrix. Well, obviously, if you don't need change block tracking, you can just add hypervisor, add credentials, initiate index, and that should be.
Okay, Marcin. So I will summarize this part, and we'll go to the next one. Okay.
Okay.
And then we can running out of time. So we can right now beautifully create the and automate all of the backups based of the tagging in the XenServer, and with using the change block tracking capability, we can be much more aggressive from the SLA point of view. So we can do in more than one incremental daily, because it's quite lightweight for our XenServer hypervisors, because we just send in the change block tracking changes from each VMs. So right now, what we'll show you is the third point that we mentioned in the agenda. So Marcin, could you go and a little bit explain what is our advantage in our architecture to have a possibility to fully orchestrate all of the tasks? Actually, everything what we see on your screen on a UI is actually the RESTful API. I'm correct?
Yes, definitely. And it's not only the UI that you're seeing, the comments that I'm typing in here, probably I need to log in, but there is a command line interface. So all of the commands also are actually passing the data to the API layer.
So we have actually three modes how we can manage the vProtect. So we can go from the command line, you can go through our UI, or you can build your own UI, or you can integrate with your own internal third-party systems to orchestrate and automate the backups, yes?
Yes, especially the last one, which I'm going to show right now. Customers are actually pushing towards the orchestration of their data centers. And any way of integrating with the actual API, that means that you're able to actually create more complex workflows, especially like self-service portals that you want to expose to either customers or actually the well, because sometimes you have internal customers. You want to expose a certain backup feature to your that enables you to easily integrate. One of those were actually CloudForms, a good example that we are using currently in one of our projects with the customers. And CloudForms is technically offers you a way of having self-service. So what we actually are doing in here, you are able to utilize those endpoints. This is our dev environment right now. So I'm able, let's say, to send login. This gives me a perfectly RESTful API. So I have JSON, I have regular posts, get, etc., commands that every code, every program developer should really have clear understanding how to use it. And later, for instance, I really need to know a few things, like I want to list hypervisors. So let's list hypervisors, right? So I'm fetching the list of the hypervisors. Sometimes I want to have more information, so there are some additional attributes. I can initiate backups, I can restore backups, etc., etc. So this is one way of integrating with the vProtect. Another way that administrators often like to use is command line interface, which actually have seen in the few seconds ago. So you have options, whichever you would like to choose in order to execute tasks, and vProtect queues all of them, and actually you are able to, well, it assigns a proper node based on the, actually let me show the screen. So I have multiple nodes, but based on the node assignments to the hypervisors, vProtect will decide which node is supposed to complete the task, and later you are able also to track those progress via RESTful APIs, and once it is done, you can show the end user appropriate message. So that's one way of doing this. Well, we can't hear you.
Okay, so we moved from all of our points. So we started with the overall architecture. We explained in how to manually index and add the machine to the groups. We explained the CBT, the orchestration, the RESTful API. So I'm really glad that you could join our webinar. So I think it's a perfect time to having some Q&A session. So please feel free to ask a question if you have something.